Smartphones and mobile operating systems were originally designed to converge the past. They replaced our phones, personal digital assistants, portable video and music players, gaming handhelds, and GPS units into one small, always connected package, and it was good. Now smartphones and mobile operating systems are in a race for the future, not just to define it, but to predict it. Surfaces can now read our fingerprints, microphones can understand what we say, cameras, who we are and what we're doing. Machines can also learn to anticipate what we'll do and want and when. Consequently, our devices have gone from reactively recording and retrieving only the information we've given them to trying to know us and proactively provide us with a range of information and services right before we realize we need them. At the same time, we live in an era where the largest internet companies in the world have told us our privacy is effectively dead and are now being forced to admit they are the ones who actively abused them to death. This is the world in which Apple is bringing iOS 12 for iPhone and iPad, which combines audacious new intelligence and assistance with fierce new protections for privacy and security. It also contains foundational performance enhancements designed to make iOS software age as well as iPhone and iPad hardware, a giant leap forward in persistent multi-person AR, proactive suggestions and voice-triggable workflows, not just for core features, but for any action in any app, much-needed improvements to notifications and do not disturb, full-on self and parental controls, fun new features for messages like Memoji, which put you not just into emoji, but into the new AR camera, and the biggest update to FaceTime since FaceTime, group calls. That might seem like a lot of random pieces, but I'm willing to bet they're all part of the same puzzle. One that, as it comes together, will reveal that iOS 12's main purpose was shoring up and rounding out interfaces, features, and devices we have today, so we'll be ready for the ones coming tomorrow. And once again, no pressure. iOS 12 supports all the same devices as iOS 11 did, which means all the 64-bit iOS devices on the market going back to 2013. Whether you decide to try the public beta or wait for the release, once you're on iOS 12, you'll have the option to enable automatic software updates. That way, just like automatic app updates have done for years now, you won't have to worry about manually updating your iPhone or iPad anymore. Whenever they become available, software updates, beta, and release will simply download and install themselves overnight. Last year, given all the iPad-centric features, I made it a point to single out how much iPhone was getting as well. This year, given how much focus there's been on iPhone, I want to make sure I do the same for iPad. There aren't many iPad-only features in iOS 12, although there is a new ink picker for Apple Pencil that can toggle line width, opacity, and color, but there are a lot of new for iPad features and updates that have been customized for iPad. The status bar layout and gesture navigation have been brought over from iPhone 10. Yeah, it's a little odd to see Apple introduce iPhone 10 style interface before introducing iPhone 10 style hardware, but make of that what you will. Last year's gestures are fully replaced by the new ones, but the 4-finger swipes and pinches introduced way back in iOS 4 remain. Also make of that what you will. If you're not a fan of using 2-finger touch and hold on the virtual keyboard to trigger trackpad mode, good news, you can now do it with just 1-finger touch and hold on the virtual spacebar. Performance improvements make older iPads launch faster and scroll smoother, and Siri shortcuts take pro workflows to the next level. ARKit 2.0 and FaceTime group calls really take advantage of the big screen, and Screen Time makes sure you, and especially your kids, aren't overdoing it on that big screen. Apple's Stocks and Voice Memos apps have finally made the leap to iPad. The weather and calculator still have not. Both the new designs and the redesigns, like the News app, feature sidebars that take advantage of iPad's split view interface to make finding specific content a breeze. Likewise, though not unique to iPad, the new camera import interface is especially useful on iPad. It might not feel as all about iPad as iOS 9 did with split view or iOS 11 did with drag and drop, but including the above and everything below, iPad owners are still in for a very good year. Apple has had a performance team for a long time now. As part of their jobs, they've been required to carry older devices running upcoming operating systems. Engineers have often carried older devices as well to help ensure performance. But every year, time is a crunch, and when something isn't a specific focus, you do the best you can and then you move on. This year, though, performance wasn't just a specific focus, it was a headline feature. The goal of iOS 12 was to make iPhone and iPad faster and more responsive, not just on current generation 2017 hardware, but on up to 5 generations going back to 2013. While competitors still struggle to get the latest version onto a single-digit percentage of devices, and many competing devices are lucky if they ever see an update at all, let alone a year, 2 or 3 years down the line, Apple is moving from leading the industry to lapping it. It also makes Apple's software a better fit for its hardware, which typically stays active for generations, not just years after it was bought, but through successive owners as it's sold or handed down. It might seem like a poor business decision on Apple's part. After all, people happy with their old devices aren't as likely to upgrade to new ones. I think Apple sees it as an investment though. People happy with their old devices are more likely to buy new devices from Apple when they finally do decide to upgrade. They're also more likely to be convincing friends and family, some of whom have creaky, cracking, nearly unchargeable, almost always unupdatable devices from other vendors, to upgrade to an Apple Next as well. It's an optimistic model, but when it's both the best thing to do and the right thing to do, you do it. The only question is, why did it take Apple so long? Part of the answer is no doubt the controversy surrounding iPhone Slow, which reached a head following Apple's decision to gate performance to preserve battery life and prevent unexpected shutdowns. The other part is resources. Apple literally took the best and the brightest engineers, the ones who make the underpinnings of the system and typically work on all the best new features, and had them spend their time improving the performance of existing frameworks and technologies instead. Apple gave its numbers at the keynote. Apps launch up to 40% faster. The keyboard launches up to 50% faster and remains more responsive. The camera launches up to 70% faster. The share sheet launches up to 100% faster, even when an older device is already under load. Achieving that kind of performance enhancement starts with the silicon. Because Apple designs its chipsets in-house, it can build and optimize for exactly what it needs. That includes changing the normal slow processor ramp up to an almost immediate one. Think going from something that graphs like a gentle, symmetrical hill to something that looks like the front end of a crashing wave. This, for example, helps solve a weird situation where a device under no load would drop frames, but when under a slight load, it would not, because in the latter case, it was already ramped up. And it was done by passing information about what scrolling was happening and when acceleration was needed from the interface framework to the CPU controller. That way, the silicon knows what's about to happen and what's needed to make it happen smoothly. On the software side, Apple worked to improve scrolling in UI Table View, UI Collection View, and similar custom views. On most devices which operate at 60 Hz, there's a 16 milliseconds to set up, fill, and draw content into cells that make up the view before frames start to drop and scrolling is affected. On a 120 Hz iPad Pro, you get just 8 milliseconds. iOS 10 began to address this with a prefetch API which could work in the background to prepare views and prevent work having to be done on demand when resources could already be strained. With iOS 12, Apple removed some edge cases which caused problems like drawing the same frame twice, which is indistinguishable from a dropped frame. In general, iOS 12 is also more intelligent about how it schedules prefetches, avoiding concurrency and handling them serially instead. Auto layout, the foundation for size classes, affects all of Apple's now multi-size and for iPad multi-window displays. It's also been significantly improved in iOS 12. Independent sibling views, for example, used to scale linearly. Now they scale sublinearly. Dependent sibling views in iOS 11 scaled exponentially. Now they scale linearly. Same with nested views. Apple also addressed memory, which directly relates to performance. Previously, when apps made a large memory request, the system had to go find that memory from somewhere, likely other apps. That delayed the current app, but also undermined other apps. For example, if you later went back to one, it would have to likely reload either partially or completely, which takes time. iOS 12 helps address this with new techniques like automatic backing stores. That means an app can draw a full fidelity portrait mode image if it needs to, but if it's only drawing a low fidelity line art image, it can drop from 64 bits down to 8 bits to significantly reduce the demands on memory. All of this to say the performance fixes go deep, and the processes for all of them are baked into iOS 12. Running the beta on older hardware right now, you can already see and feel incredible improvements at the system level. Many of them also depend on developers adopting the new techniques as well though, so come fall we should see even bigger improvements. One day, augmented reality will live in our glasses and contact lenses, then in the photons hacked on their way to our visual receptors, if not embedded right into our brains. For now, it lives inside our iPhones and iPads, and Apple seems to want to make sure it goes as fast and as far with the technology on our current devices so it's as mature as possible by the time we get to whatever comes next. And that suits me just fine. But rewind. ARKit, it's Apple's framework for tracking the position and orientation of devices relative to the world around them, and by extension, us, and the movement and expression of human faces. It can also understand scenes. ARKit 1, introduced just a short year ago, could handle single user experiences and horizontal surfaces and lighting conditions. Then it could render non-real 3D objects using SpriteKit, SceneKit, or metal templates that felt like they belonged in that world, and also enjoyed support from Unreal and Unity gaming engines. ARKit 1.5 was shipped earlier this year, included support for things like vertical and irregular surfaces, continuous autofocus, and relocalization so apps could resume from background. Now, ARKit 2 includes 4:3 video formats, think iPad, 2D image tracking, and 3D object detection, so a photo can drag an augmentation with it, and a real-world model can come alive through AR, environmental textures and mapping to make augmented look more real, persistent experiences so you can put that model away at home, take it back out at school tomorrow, and continue right where you left off, improved face tracking specifically for winking, gaze, and tongue, yes, tongue movement, and wait for it, multi-user experiences. There's a ton of cool tech here, including a new standardized file format for AR called USDZ. It was launched in collaboration with Pixar and Adobe, so it could catch on. The mesh for face tracking by itself looks totally sci-fi. Apple renders it with lighting that estimates intensity, direction, and ambient color temperature, but also provides spherical harmonic coefficients, yeah, I had to look that up too, for apps that need them. It basically makes rendered augmentations look like they fit into the real world around them. Some find the new gaze tracking creepy and the tongue detection a tad on the excessive side. I haven't explored the former enough to form an educated opinion on it, but I'll be doing that before it's live this fall. The latter is just plain fun though. It's also binary for now, so tongue in, tongue out, no elaborate tongue gymnastics just yet. Map saving and loading is what enables persistence and multi-person experiences. Instead of generating and then throwing away the 3D world map, ARKit now provides it to developers, complete with simple anchors and support for custom anchors to keep and to share. For multi-user, because the world map represents a single real-world coordinate system, one person can initiate the experience and then share it with one or more people, and each of them share the same AR space from their own physical perspective. It does this by being not only faster to initialize in iOS 12, but faster and more robust tracking and plane detection. The experience is shared locally through multi-peer Bluetooth and Wi-Fi networking, which means you're not relying on the cloud, which is great for performance and privacy. You can also use the internet when you want to, not because you have to. There's a fiendishly clever system for reflection mapping. While building the world map, ARKit also uses computer vision to build out a cube or other map representation based on scene texture. Machine learning is used to fill in any holes and create the hallucination of a complete map, as long as you don't look at it too closely. Reflection probes then detect objects and apply that texture when and as appropriate. I had the chance to try LEGO ARKit experience at WWDC, and it was a ton of fun. It uses a 3D object detection, which means the object needs to be both built in the real world and scanned in a digital one first, and the objects for now need to be textured, rigid, and non-reflective. But the real-world Lego building that sat on a table with an iPad, I could crack it wide open, drop the Joker in, and watch as he promptly set it on fire. Then another person who was playing with me could call up the Batman, get him into the chopper, and rescue the clowns, while a third positioned a fire truck to put the blaze out. I've built Lego for years, including a pretty sweet Arkham Asylum set, and I'd like nothing more than to bring it to life with my godkids for a few hours every week. I also played a bunch of the Swift Shot game, which is a code sample for ARKit. You have 3 catapults, your opponent has 3 catapults, last catapult standing wins. What made it so much fun, especially the tournament on the last day of WWDC, was the multiple people could join in and watch, and when that happens, it starts to blur the lines between augmented and reality. It's not just all fun in games either. Shared experiences are going to be transformative in everything from education, where a teacher can lead a classroom through augmented discoveries, to enterprise, where teams can collaborate on prototyping, production, repair, and iteration. About the only thing I'm missing in all this AR goodness is it being integrated into Apple's Maps. Hopefully the map side data for that isn't too far away. And yeah, we're all still semi-awkwardly holding our phones and tablets up to do all this for now, but again, at some point in the near future, we won't be, and Apple will have all this technology, and all these apps will have all this content for us when that time comes. Clever fruit company. Part showcase, part utility, Apple is shipping a new Measure app in iOS 12. With it, you can use ARKit to automatically detect and measure objects, including tables, walls, artwork, shelves, and anything else that's rectangular in shape. All you have to do is draw a line with your finger and you'll get the metrics. Portrait lighting is out of beta, or it will be when iOS 12 ships this fall. It uses Apple's new and improved segmentation masking to better separate subjects from background. And with the TrueDepth camera on the front of iPhone X, it reduces the previous blurriness around edges. If you load the depth data into an app capable of displaying it, you'll also see it significantly better. Where TrueDepth under iOS 11 looked bumpy, TrueDepth under iOS 12 looks like a 3D model. This is why, yes, you really do need depth data from your camera systems. Apple is also providing a new segmentation system to developers so they can use the mats in their own apps. Importing photos from other cameras and onto iPhone and iPad has also been improved. It's easier to tell which photos, if any, you've already imported. You can choose now where you want to import them, either into an existing or new album. There's a large preview mode on iPhone iPhones, you can scrutinize your photos in more detail before choosing to import them. And once you start an import, you can switch to other apps and leave it importing in the background. You can even edit raw photos on iPhone 7 or later, or on iPad Pro. Photos hold a digital representation of all the moments you care about, be they pictures or videos of your kids, screen captures of glorious or terrible moments, even your favorite animated memes. All of it. Historically though, Photos has held them more like a vault than like a library. It's been incredibly easy to get stuff in, but very difficult to get stuff back out. Apple began to fix that a couple years ago with computer vision assisted search. Instead of just knowing something was a picture, computer vision let Apple know what was in the picture. Mostly. Even though Apple kicked it off with thousands of category types, it still felt limited. You couldn't even search for Apple's own devices, for example. With iOS 12, photo search gets better. It's still not great, which is super frustrating because search, including complex and sloppy search, feel like problems that were solved decades ago. Granted, all the machine learning stuff is new, and meritoriously, Apple's doing it on device and not sucking it up to the cloud to power its own projects, which for some other companies seems to include training surveillance and even drone systems for government agencies and the military. But that's not the part that feels like the limitation here. It's still the basic search. Photos offers search suggestions now, which are fine. I'm not the target market for that feature, but I think given the popularity of memories, it'll be a big hit with those who use photos as a way to go back and relive their favorite memories. It's also got a far more robust query system, including the ability to search not just for categories, but for places, business names, and really cool, over 4 million real-world events by time and place. Things like sports games, concerts, and more. The way Photos handles search itself, though, just feels incredibly broken to me, and it's because of the refinements mechanic. See, Apple wants you to type in one thing, like San Francisco, then get that result, then type in something to refine it, like 2016. But I just want to type in San Francisco 2016 without having to interrupt myself and do the manual parsing. That's Apple's job. I should just be able to type without a second thought, and Photos should slice and dice it as needed to give me the best answer. Instead, if I type San Francisco 2016, I get no answer. Then I have to go back and delete the 2016, send off the San Francisco query, then add the 2016 back, and I just want to quit the app already. First, no answer is a terrible user experience. It makes you feel like you did something wrong. Systems should always do everything possible to avoid returning no answer, including trying to guess the answer it thinks you want, regardless of what you typed. Second, this implementation is particularly bad because I'm asking for a perfectly conventional query, and something that currently returns results under iOS 11. I'm hoping Apple can fix this before iOS 12 goes from beta into release, because it tarnishes what should otherwise be a huge leap forward in Photos functionality. There's also a new For You tab, which I like. Again, it's not how I use Photos because I'm apparently more robot than person, but it's consistent with Apple Music, and I was gonna say Apple News, but iOS 12 ditches the For You tab in News in favor of a Today tab. Consistency is a user benefit, so it's weird timing. I'm also hoping Apple can standardize around Today for everything. It loses a little on the personal feels, but gains immediacy, and is a nice crossover with everything from Apple Retail to the new App Store. Suggested sharing, which is something Apple piloted in the Clips app a couple years ago, is especially good, because if you let it, Faces can know who's in a picture, Photos can surface it when and as appropriate, and prompt you to share with your friends. Even better, thanks to things like event detection, if you send photos to someone else also running iOS 12, it can prompt them to share related photos back to you. It's like memories tennis, and I think it'll be super popular. Effects for live photos like loop, bounce, and long exposure will also be suggested for photos the system thinks will suit them. And I also like the improved informational density on the Albums view, which replaces what was previously a wall of thumbnails with only the most important thumbnails, and then a text list of media types. Not only does it make scrolling faster, it makes visually parsing the different sections much faster. Some still assume Siri is only a voice-based assistant, and it is. It's even getting 40 new language pairs for Siri translation, along with the ability to turn on the flashlight, to play Find My Friends alerts, answer questions about celebrities, food, and motorsports, and search for your photo memories and even passwords. Since iOS 9, though, Siri has also been a text-based assistant. That's when the name Siri also began to be used for proactive, intelligent search and suggestions. So when Apple announced Siri shortcuts, some assumed it was only a power user feature that would let nerds assign voice triggers to actions and automations. Well, that's true, it's only half the story. In addition to the power user aspect, there's an equally important, potentially even more important aspect to Siri shortcuts that's all about the mainstream. What Apple announced were really two separate yet interconnected services. Proactive prompting for mainstream users that'll gently lead them into greater convenience they never knew they needed, and voice triggerable automation for nerds that'll let them do much of what they always wanted. And of the two, I think the first will not only be super easy to get started with, it'll be transformative. Not with automation, again, that's for power users, but with suggestions, those are for the mainstream. Developers can tap into the existing NS user activity to make locations available within their apps, and then they can use the new intent Enhance API to let the system know more expansively the actions available in the app. Once that's done, Siri keeps track of what you do with them and when you do it and tries to guess what you'll do next. Then, instead of having to go find the app and dig down into the function you want, it presents it to you right before it thinks you'll need it, and right where you already are in the operating system. For example, if you always order pizza before the game on Sunday, instead of having to go to the pizza app, pick your favorite, and place your order, it'll have a banner waiting for you right on your lock screen, ready for you to place your favorite order. If you always text your spouse to say you're on your way home from work, instead of having to go to messages, find the conversation, tap to start a new message, a banner will be waiting for you, ready to be able to send that message with a single tap. Sure, if you want to, you can add a voice trigger at any time, say pizza time or homeward bound, to initiate these actions. It's the new engine that will help mainstream users discover shortcuts at the right time, in the right context. That's powerful, that's push-based, and they couldn't be easier to discover and get started with, and will be another step closer to the next big revolution in human interface. Apple's Voice Memos app, introduced in iOS 3, nay iPhone OS 3, has gotten its first major update since iOS 3, not including the photorealistic flattening it received as part of the overall iOS 7 redesign. Saving is automatic now, no more modal pop-up step to get in your way, and new memos simply default to location-based naming. You can play, pause, skip 15 seconds, back or forth, trash, and even edit, duplicate, and share right from the voice memos list. The record screen, which is in dark mode, starts small, but you can pull it up like now playing in music. There you can trim and even insert into the recording. It's nifty. You can also control playback on your Apple Watch via the now playing screen. Best of all is iCloud Sync, so now all of your voice memos are on all of your devices. I've been asked to use voice memos to record my end of national radio interviews, and I've used it to record podcasts while traveling, so it's great to see it finally getting some love. Apple News, the app, has gotten a reorg. For You has been renamed Today, which matches the Today tab on App Store. The timing is odd given Photos for iOS 12 has just gotten a For You section and Music still has a For You section. I'd love to see some consistency here. There's also a new Browse tab that replaces the previous Following, Search, and Save tabs, combining them all into a single one-stop shop for everything you want to find. It should help with both discovery and channel selection. On iPad, in wider views, it shows up as a persistent sidebar, making skimming even easier. I miss having a dedicated search tab, which other apps like Photos and App Store still offer, and again, it breaks consistency. I do think there's some value in experimentation, but I'm not sure this one will pay off. We'll see. Right now, the whole tab bar just looks sparse. Apple News, the service, remains terrific. I'd argue it's one of Apple's best and will only get better when Apple eventually integrates its magazine subscription service into it. It combines human curation on top of algorithms to provide a more thoughtful, more broad-based, and dare I say more responsible and trustworthy news feed than just about any of the big internet companies have so far managed. But here's the thing. Apple News is still only available in the original 3 launch countries of the US, UK, and Australia, and it's been over 3 years. Contrast that to Apple Music, which launched in 100 countries and is in well over 100 countries now. Also contrast it with Google News, which launched just last month in 127 countries, and Microsoft News, which launched just last week, and while I couldn't find a country count, it seemed numerous. News has never been more important, nor is ailing. Apple's approach to it is optimistic and laudable, yet for the vast majority of customers, the service doesn't even exist. Let's hope once Apple integrates texture or whatever is holding it up, we can start seeing them execute news internationally, and soon. Apple Books, originally iBooks, has been completely redesigned for iOS 12. Similar to last year's App Store redesign, the goal was to make it easier to discover new ebooks and audiobooks, organize and read your existing books, and return to what you were last reading. My colleague, Serenity Caldwell, has put together an excellent preview, so I'm just going to link that in the description below. The topic of screen addiction has been getting a lot of attention this year. That much of the attention has been driven by opportunism and sensationalism doesn't discount the real need for real people, for real tools to let them better manage their time, and more importantly, the time and attention of their children. It's true, previous generations spent hours in front of televisions, radios, and books, and never needed tools to manage that time, but those products also lack the ability to provide such tools. And yes, no tools are a replacement for self-discipline and active parenting, but these types of tools can be used as supplements to both of those things. In other words, if you have trouble saying no to yourself or to your child, iOS will have absolutely no such trouble. Screen time is actually joined by a few new features in iOS 12. Do Not Disturb D&D, if you use the bedtime integration, will automatically suppress notifications at night so that if you wake up before the morning and decide to check the time, you're not tempted to tap right into messages or Twitter or Facebook and never get back to sleep. Likewise, when you do wake up in the morning, you won't be inundated with all of your notifications all at once. Instead, you'll just see the weather until you unlock and indicate you're ready, if not always willing, to start your day. If you manually enable Do Not Disturb from Control Center, 3D Touch now lets you set an automatic endpoint for an hour until the evening, until you change locations, or if you're in the middle of an event, like a meeting, until the event ends. Siri will also proactively suggest D&D along with endpoints when it thinks you'll find it useful, like if it detects a movie pass in your wallet or a dinner reservation in your calendar. There's also a provision for critical alerts, which include healthcare, public safety, and personal security apps, and will let them, with your explicit approval, blast through any D&D setting and even the ringer switch set to mute and play a sound to help make sure they get your attention. Apps have to apply for a special entitlement to use critical alerts and need to present a special permission request for you to approve them, so the chances of them being abused are very, very low. But if your blood sugar is low or your alarm system is triggered and you have your device with you, you will know about it. As someone who has turned on D&D to work or film and forgotten to turn it off, I really appreciate these settings. People can feel anxiety when cut off the same way they do when turned on, so just knowing you don't have to worry about forgetting to change state makes using D&D so much more compelling. This is coupled with instant tuning for notifications. With it, you can adjust the alerts you get right from the alert itself. For example, you can set a notification to deliver quietly or turn it off entirely. It's another example of push interface, surfacing functionality where and when needed. You can even tap to go straight from the notification to settings if you want to set custom options. Now, it does create two classes of notifications. Prominent notifications are the ones we're all used to. They light up and stick to your lock screen, beep or buzz your phone, banner the top of your screen, badge your icons, and get collected up in Notification Center. Quiet notifications, by contrast, skip the lock screen, never beep or buzz, and don't banner or badge, but still get collected up in Notification Center. If you choose to turn off rather than just quiet notifications, you're presented with a confirmation sheet. That's partly to prevent accidental turnoffs, partly to provide developers with a way to offer you alternatives. For example, a Twitter client might offer a configure button that lets you choose to turn on or off different types of notifications or notifications from different people. In other words, it basically deep links into in-app settings for better customization. Apple is also providing a deep link from the system settings to in-app settings if available as well. Because you can now manage notifications from within the notifications themselves, Apple is being more lenient about when and how apps can send you notifications. It's called provisional authorization, and it's intended to be a way for apps to let you test out the notifications rather than forcing you to grant or refuse permission right up front, with no context or experience around what type of notification you'll be getting. It's opt-in for developers, and if they choose to use it, you'll no longer get the notification permission pop-up when you first set up an app. But there's a price. Any notification they send will be delivered quietly by default. If and when you see one of those provisionally authorized notifications in Notification Center and expand it, it will also give you the keep and turn off buttons and a configure in-app button if available right up front. The hope is, at that point, you'll know enough to make a more informed choice about your notification settings. I'm not sure how I feel about all this yet because I'm not getting any of those notifications yet. Will they prove helpful or just annoying? I'll be waiting for iOS 12 to ship and the notifications to start coming in before I make up my mind. You can access instant tuning either by swiping the notification and tapping on Manage, or by opening a rich notification and tapping on the More button. Siri can also suggest muting or turning off notifications for apps it no longer thinks you're using. That's all terrific, but it's also about damn time. Speaking of which, notifications are no longer presented as single items in a reverse chronological list. Now they're automatically grouped both on the lock screen and in Notification Center. By default, notifications are grouped by app using the bundle ID. Get a new notification from an app and it goes right to the top of the app stack. And it's the groups that are now presented in reverse chronological order based on the most recent app to receive a notification. Developers can also use existing thread identifier properties to set up custom groups. Messages, for example, aren't all jumbled together. Instead, each conversation gets its own group. Also, by default, each group contains a summary at the bottom right indicating how many individual notifications are in the group, but developers can override the default text if there's more pertinent information they want to provide. You triage notifications a group at a time, which is a great compromise between one at a time and the scorched earth that is 3D Touch Clear All. If you don't like groups or threads, you can still have the final say. You can go into Settings, Notifications, find the app or apps you want to change, and switch from Automatic, which is grouping, to By App, which has no subgrouping, to Off, which is old style, no grouping at all. Tap on a group and it expands out to show you each individual notification. In the expanded state, you can clear all the notifications or act on any single notification you want. Interactive notifications are also being improved. Building on the notification content extensions included with iOS 10, iOS 12 now lets apps dynamically update or even remove options as context changes. So for example, if you already liked a friend's video through a notification and then you open the notification again, you won't still find a like button staring at you, making you wonder if you really smashed it hard enough the first time. Instead, it could present you with an unlike button, which is actually kind of scary. Worse notifications can also receive direct interactions. So instead of having to hang a like button beneath the video notification, developers could integrate a thumbs up icon right into the notification itself. Because this adds complexity, and because some people might be used to just jabbing notification to open up the app, for example, developers can now also create custom buttons and triggers to open an app or dismiss but not clear a notification. To continue with the same example, tapping the video could open the video app, or tapping the thumbs up icon could both like the video and dismiss the notification at the same time. Screen time proper is all new though. It lives in settings and was designed to provide you with a dashboard that shows how you spend your time on your Apple devices. In other words, it's not here to screen shame you, it's here to screen inform you. It shows you the time you're spending on your device and how you're spending it during the week, during the day, even throughout the day. There's a big graph which helps give you the big picture, and you can tap into it to get more detailed information. It's also broken down by categories like social networking, entertainment, and productivity, and will highlight time you might want to be especially careful about, like after bedtime when you should be sleeping and not correcting everyone who is wrong on the internet. You can see how your current usage relates to your average usage, and you can see per app usage, how often you're picking up your device, and what apps you're going to first when you unlock your device. Also, you can see how many notifications you're getting, including an hourly average, and which apps are sending those notifications and how many. You'll also get a weekly summary pushed to you as a notification, so if you forget, or quote unquote forget to check it out, it'll come find you. If you're not happy with the amount of time you're spending in one or more apps, you can set up app limits. It's useful not just for people who can't control themselves, but for people who lose track of time, especially in apps like social networking and games that are designed as attention traps using the same type of psychology perfected in casinos over the last few decades. Tap on any app in your report and set any amount of time on any or all days you want. You'll get a notification telling you when you're almost at your limit and an intercept sheet when you've reached it. You can choose to dismiss the intercept and ignore the limit if you want to, but you'll only be cheating yourself. If you own multiple Apple devices like an iPhone and an iPad, app limits will also sync between them, so you can't just switch devices to stop the clock. If you're a parent, you can set up your children's devices to send you their screen time reports as well. Also, instead of app limits, you can set up app allowances that sets the amount of time they can watch videos or play games. Kids can even send you a request for more time, which kind of defeats the purpose of the machine being the big bad, frankly. You can set up downtime, which blocks almost all usage, and you can limit time by app category or individual app. You can also whitelist apps like phone so they can always call home in case of an emergency. And of course, restrictions, parental controls are still there, albeit jostled around a little, so you can turn off specific functionality and content types as you feel best. It's all tied into the existing family sharing infrastructure, so you can manage what your child does on their devices, on your device, and also through what's sent back to your device. I am worried that I'll spend so much time in screen time that screen time will show up for me in screen time, but ultimately information is good. I like that Apple is providing all the insight and functionality without pandering to us or infantilizing us. I believe nature and life tends towards a balance, so if screen time helps people achieve that for themselves and their families, more power to it, and to us. New Animoji. This is not a drill. Animoji are a gimmick, but they're an important one. First, they not only provide a real-world example of what face detection and ARKit can do, but they harness the appeal of emoji to provide a gateway into augmented reality itself. Like many Apple projects, they started small. At iPhone X launch, only a few Animoji were available. More came in the spring though, and now Ghost, Koala, Tiger, and even T-Rex is joining them. All with support for ARKit 2's better eye tracking, wink detection, and tongue detection, of course. But Apple isn't stopping with Animoji. With iOS 12, we're also getting Memoji. That means we can all build our very own Animoji, and better still, multiple Animoji. You start off with a blank slate, or face, gender neutral, devoid of hair, freckles, or distinguishing features of any kind. You start customizing your Memoji by choosing a skin tone. All the standard emoji tones are there, but so are all the colors of the rainbow, and even gray. You can also choose freckles here with 4 options from none to a face near full. The point is, you can make your Memoji as you are, as you see yourself, as anything you can imagine being. It can be cartoonishly literal, but can also be limitless. Next is hairstyle, which includes main color, cut and style, and a highlight color. All the same color options are available here, and there are a bunch of great cuts and styles, though nothing overly long. The physics are also amazing, especially on longer hair. Head shape lets you choose your age, which honestly really only seems to vary from looking like a 3-year-old to looking like a 7-year-old. Though it fits with the cartoon emoji style, I'd love to see more wrinkled options for more mature people. Chins give you some cheek and jowl options, but nothing cleft. Superman and I are both shook by this. Eyes can also be any one of the natural or rainbow colors, and in any one of 9 shapes. Eyelashes have 9 levels of thickness, from Born With It to Maybe Maybelline, and eyebrows a whole screen of options. You can choose from 3 nose types, from button narrow to button wide, and 9 lip types, with all the usual color ranges here as well. Ears also have 3 options, from flat to slightly standout, and there are a dozen earring options, though sadly nothing for AirPods. You can customize sideburns from clean to Elvis and mustache and beard through a wide range of combinations, including Mr. T. No Dalrymple though, but I assume Jim and ZZ Top have already filed their bug reports. Eyewear includes options for frame and lens color, though not as many as other sections, and a dozen styles. Headwear has everything from turban to top hat, pith helmet to pillbox. Once you've made a Memoji, you can duplicate it and make variants, for example with sunglasses or hats or with your hair up or down. You can use your Memojis just like any Animoji, either recording a now up to 30-second animated clip with sound or sending them as still images or stickers. But you can also use them and standard Animoji in the new embedded camera. I'm going to call it the AR camera, even though Apple isn't, at least not yet. Tap the camera button, tap the effects button, and you get a front-facing selfie view that gives you access to dynamic versions of messaging apps. There are filters that look like something out of the Clips app, including comic book, comic mono, ink, watercolor, watercolor mono, vivid, vivid warm, vivid cool, dramatic, dramatic warm, dramatic cool, silvertone, one of my favorites, and noir. All your iMessage stickers show up here as well, and thanks to ARKit, you can stick them not just into the real-time camera view, but onto whatever objects you can detect in the scene as well. There's even a new Apple-supplied shape sticker pack that includes stars, hearts, squiggles, arrows, and more. Gussy up a shot any way you want, including with your favorite emoji, and hit send. Sure, it only works with the front-facing true-depth camera on iPhone X right now, but more and more devices will be getting that camera, and maybe on more than just the front. That's also why I think the main camera app doesn't have the AR feature yet. Apple's waiting for the fall when it might just go both ways. Because the camera button takes you directly to the AR camera now, Photos has been demoted to a button in the app strip. I kind of hate it. I keep hitting the camera button out of habit and there's no elegant way to press on. No mercy, photos please button in the camera, so you have to back out awkwardly over and over again. Maybe new habits will save me or Apple will take pity on me and figure out something better. We'll just have to wait and see. FaceTime also gets the new AR camera as well, and you can use all the same features and effects. It's especially great for the new group FaceTime calls. And yeah, you heard that right. 8 years after Apple announced FaceTime, the service is finally getting conference calls. And it's even better than I dared dream. You can place group FaceTime calls to up to 32 people at a time. That number wasn't chosen at random. It matches the current iMessage group limit, so you can move seamlessly between text and audio and video chat without anybody ever feeling left out. You can also place calls from inside FaceTime or messages, start them as audio only or full-on video. People can join or drop out at any point, and you can choose to participate as audio only or with full-on video. Apple Watch and HomePod can only answer in audio, but iPad, iPhone, and Mac can do either audio or full video. Group call notifications are ringless, so people won't hear a ringtone, but simply see an alert they can tap to join at any point while the call is still active. It's the interface that absolutely nails it though. Instead of being a static grid or a ready row with a single speaker, it's a dynamic stage with a roster at the bottom and tiles up top that shrink and grow elegantly as people speak up or simmer down. FaceTime controls the rate of tile change as well, so no one will explode or fizzle too fast on your screen. You can also double tap on any participant at any time to put them into focus view, up front, and center stage on your device. Sadly, if someone is misbehaving, you can't crack their tile and send them back to the roster penalty box, but that's what feature requests are for. Because this is Apple, even with the new features, both Messages and FaceTime remain end-to-end encrypted, keeping them private and secure. Security requires a degree of convenience. If security is too inconvenient, people stop using it. Touch ID and Face ID are examples of this, but there are many more. Apple's been actively working to make security more convenient for years, and iOS 12 continues that tradition. Face ID on iPhone X now lets you retry failed scan attempts by simply repeating the swipe up gesture. It's much better than the current version where it immediately and unforgivingly dumps you into passcode after a single failed attempt. You can also register an alternate appearance for Face ID. No, it won't let you add a second person's face, but what it will do is if you work or socialize with an appearance that's significantly different, it'll let you store that version as well to let Face ID cover you to a greater degree. Performers, cosplayers, people who wear safety equipment on the job, people transitioning assisting people with prosthetics. It's not something everyone will need, but it is something that will benefit some people enormously. Touch ID also gets integrated into iCloud Keychain's autofill system, like Face ID was at launch. It means if you have an older iPhone, you can now hand it to someone to make an emergency call or to look up something at a conference without worrying that you're giving them your logins or credit cards at the same time. Combined with new, strong, unique password generation for Safari and in apps, it makes iCloud Keychain a first-class password manager for anyone needing basic functionality. And today, that's everyone. If you get sent an SMS security token as part of a login attempt, the QuickType keyboard will now suggest that for autofill as well. That saves you having to test your memory or jump back and forth between messages and the web or the app. I'm not a huge fan of SMS-based security tokens because people have socially engineered them or used them while in possession of a device, but for most people, it makes what can be a cumbersome process more manageable. To that end, Apple has also added Siri, show me my passwords, so you can go straight to your account list. You can even ask for specific passwords. For example, Siri, show me my Instagram password. Reused passwords are flagged in the account list, and there's a link to the web or app so you can replace them with new, strong, unique passwords too. It's fabulous. You can also share your passwords between nearby devices, including Apple TV, which is so much more convenient. For people who already use or need a more advanced password manager, Apple is providing a password manager API to integrate them into autofill as well, so you can inject your 1Password, Dashlane, LastPass, etc. credentials right into any website or app that supports them. No more share sheet required. I can't overstate how great or how important this is. Proactively, iOS 12 also includes new and improved intelligent tracking prevention. Previously, ITP used machine learning to try and prevent cross-site tracking. Now it can also block the share, like, and comment buttons that social networks like Facebook and Twitter use to track you across the web. ITP will also try to prevent fingerprinting, where companies try to track you based on the configuration of your device by presenting a simplified, much harder to track configuration. It also removes support for legacy plugins that could be used for tracking. Everything from ARKit face tracking, which smart developers have used to make the Mac navigable by head turning and mouth clicking, to Siri shortcuts for triggering actions and workflows, are at their core major new accessibility features. But they're not the only new accessibility features. Apple is also bringing live listening to AirPods. Previously available to hearing aids, live listening lets you add a button to Control Center that, when tapped, turns on your iPhone microphone and streams any audio it picks up straight to your AirPods. So you can turn it on, put your iPhone down next to the TV or the lecture stand or the baby crib and take your seat or do your housework and hear everything you might otherwise have missed. It's not the same as real hearing aids, but it's also not nearly as expensive, especially if you're already using AirPods. There are a ton of smaller but important new features in iOS 12 that also deserve some attention. You can throw away app cards on iPhone 10 without having to touch, hold, and bring up the kill button anymore. Of course, you still shouldn't force quit apps, but now it's much faster to quit apps that are misbehaving. Battery health, introduced in iOS 11.3, now shows screen time style charts so you can get the gist at a glance but tap into the bar for more detailed information anytime you want. While it has support for student ID cards, educational institutions have to add them in, but if and when they do, students can use their iPhones and Apple Watches to tap into libraries, gyms, cafeterias, dorms, labs, vending machines, events, and more. It uses NFC and other Apple Pay-like technologies and would be super useful for businesses as well as schools. So here's hoping Apple expands the feature over time. I mean, rumor has it Apple first deployed it in Apple Park. CarPlay now supports third-party maps, including Google Maps and Waze, which should make a lot of people happy. There are new dictionaries for Arabic and English, Hindi and English, and Hebrew and English, and a new English thesaurus for looking up synonyms and antonyms. iOS 12 is coming this fall. That's why this is a preview and not a review, and why my thoughts are still being formed. I have opinions on all of it, as you might have just heard, but I want to try the betas for a while and use the release candidate before drawing any real conclusions. There's a lot I'd still like to see from Apple, from small details like rotation lock for everything but photos and video, to support for multiple timers, to rounding out foundational technologies with handoff for media and the ability to change default apps, to re-revolutions like a new home screen experience and far deeper, more personal, though still private context for Siri. Maybe tomorrow. Today, iOS 12 is the biggest sign yet that Apple is starting to think beyond multi-touch interfaces by finally opening up a voice to all apps and beyond current devices by pushing augmented reality so far, so fast. But in the meantime, there's still performance improvement for past devices and better security and privacy and a ton more fun for the here and now. Now, some of the stuff is a little complicated for me. For example, reading all the graphs. But luckily there's Brilliant, and they have courses for everything, including, you guessed it, graphing. The graphing and modeling course includes an introduction, function fundamentals, transformations, powers and radicals, polynomials, factoring polynomials, rational functions, piecewise functions, and more. And while nothing important is ever easy to learn, Brilliant makes it fun to learn by engaging you with puzzles and problems to solve. And because Brilliant is sponsoring the show, if you go to brilliant.org/vector, you can sign up for free, and the first 200 of you can get the premium course for 20% off. Thank you, Brilliant. So that's my deep dive into iOS 12. If you've finished downloading and installing it by now and you're willing to take the plunge, let me know what you think. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, and then let me know in the comments. And thank you so much for watching.
iOS 12, with all new capabilities, including taking AR further than ever before, bringing Siri to any app with Siri shortcuts and screen time, and cool new communication features like Memoji and group FaceTime.